2018, 21 países han creado o designado un mecanismo coordinador para la implementación y seguimiento de la Agenda 2030 a través de una resolución o decreto. Otro aspecto importante es que más del 50% de las secretarías técnicas de estos mecanismos son las autoridades de planificación. Tienen el gran desafío de coordinar a los sectores, de convocar a los actores, de definir las estrategias y alianzas para el logro de los ODS y prepararse para los procesos de rendición de cuentas. Ello posiciona a la planificación como un medio de implementación de la Agenda 2030 y plantea grandes desafíos tanto para los funcionarios como para las prácticas de la administración pública. La Agenda 2030 nos desafía a planificar con una visión integrada y de largo plazo. El nuevo escenario global en tiempos de la pandemia provocada por el COVID-19 hace imperativo tomar medidas urgentes y evaluar los impactos de estas acciones. Para apoyar el seguimiento y monitoreo de avances a mediano y largo plazo, la CEPAL ha puesto en marcha el Observatorio COVID-19, un esfuerzo coordinado por la Comisión Regional con el apoyo de los coordinadores residentes de las Naciones Unidas, que presenta información actualizada sobre los anuncios de política de cada país y otros materiales de interés. El observatorio recopila y pone a disposición tanto las políticas públicas que los 33 países de la región latinoamericana y caribeña están tomando para limitar el impacto de la pandemia, como el análisis de los efectos económicos y sociales que éstas tendrán a nivel nacional y sectorial. En un mapa interactivo, los interesados podrán visualizar de manera clara las acciones realizadas por cada país. Estas están divididas en 5 grupos: medidas de contención, de salud, empleo, economía y educación. Visita el Observatorio COVID-19 de la CEPAL y accede a información actualizada de las medidas de política para enfrentar la crisis en la región. El Observatorio del Principio 10 en América Latina y el Caribe es una iniciativa de la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, CEPAL, por contribuir a un mejor conocimiento, difusión e implementación de los derechos de acceso a la información, la participación pública y el acceso a la justicia en asuntos ambientales consagrados en el Principio 10 de la Declaración de Río sobre Medio Ambiente y Desarrollo. El observatorio ofrece referencias destacadas de los derechos de acceso en leyes, políticas, jurisprudencia y tratados relativos a los 33 países de América Latina y el Caribe. Además, proporciona acceso a publicaciones, datos, mapas y recursos relacionados y cuenta con temáticas como biodiversidad, cambio climático, género, educación ambiental, minería, pueblos indígenas o defensores ambientales. Como centro de intercambio de información, el observatorio busca hacer un aporte a la implementación del Acuerdo Regional sobre el acceso a la información, la participación pública y el acceso a la justicia en asuntos ambientales en América Latina y el Caribe, Acuerdo de Escazú. El Observatorio COVID-19 en América Latina y el Caribe es una plataforma impulsada por la CEPAL a solicitud de la Comunidad de Estados Latinoamericanos y Caribeños CELAC. El observatorio rastrea las políticas públicas que los países de América Latina y el Caribe están implementando para limitar el impacto de la pandemia del COVID-19 en la región. A través de informes y documentos, ofrece análisis de los impactos económicos y sociales que estas políticas tendrán a nivel nacional y sectorial, además de apoyar su revisión y seguimiento a mediano y largo plazo. En un mapa interactivo, los interesados pueden visualizar de manera clara las acciones realizadas por cada país en materia de restricciones a desplazamientos, salud, economía, empleo, protección social, educación y género. Visita el Observatorio COVID-19 de la CEPAL y accede a información actualizada de las medidas de política para enfrentar la crisis en la región. Atendiendo el llamado del secretario general de las Naciones Unidas, Antonio Guterres, quien propuso el establecimiento de centros regionales de gestión del conocimiento, la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe y el Programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo, en conjunto con los fondos, programas y agencias especializadas del Sistema de las Naciones Unidas y la Oficina de Coordinación del Desarrollo para América Latina y el Caribe, se unieron para diseñar e implementar el portal de los ODS, una plataforma web que busca ser un factor clave para la coordinación y la disponibilidad de los activos regionales del sistema de las Naciones Unidas en América Latina y el Caribe. Este centro de gestión del conocimiento en línea tiene por objeto servir de punto de encuentro y referencia para toda la información relacionada con los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, incluidas actividades, recursos de información, estadísticas, datos regionales, instrumentos analíticos específicos y productos de conocimiento desarrollados y proporcionados por el Sistema de Desarrollo de las Naciones Unidas en respuesta a las necesidades de los países miembros. Visita esta importante plataforma multiactor y conoce más acerca de este centro de gestión del conocimiento regional en línea.
In the very year that the United Nations launched the Decade for Action to ignite a more purposeful understanding of the part of the international community towards advancing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the world has confronted unprecedented change in the specter of COVID-19. The multi-dimensioned impact of this pandemic has served to dramatize the true scale of the vulnerability of the small, heavily indebted, undiversified economies of the Caribbean, and has forced creative exploration of every opportunity within the reach of our member states to secure urgent relief. The 2020 meetings of the Caribbean Development Roundtable and the Caribbean Development and Cooperation Committee will offer space for taking stock of the progress so far made in persuading the international community to extend this financial support needed, middle income status notwithstanding, and to dialogue on those strategies that will take you from vulnerability to resilient development, from economic peril to recovery and dynamic growth. It is an opportunity to consider how together we strengthen partnerships for action that is responsive to the unique vulnerabilities of the Caribbean, and that assures tangible progress through the application of innovative problem solving in these precarious times.
El Observatorio de Desarrollo Social en América Latina y el Caribe es una herramienta regional de conocimiento de la CEPAL. Su creación responde a un mandato de la segunda reunión de la Conferencia Regional sobre Desarrollo Social de América Latina y el Caribe, cuando los Estados miembros le solicitaron a la CEPAL la conformación de un observatorio de desarrollo social que acompañe el diseño y la implementación de las políticas públicas y permita monitorear sus tendencias. De esta forma, el observatorio promueve el desarrollo integral de América Latina y el Caribe con enfoque de derechos y de igualdad a través del análisis de la situación social de la región, de las políticas públicas y de la asistencia técnica a los países que lo soliciten. El observatorio también integra un conjunto de plataformas digitales. Se destacan las bases de datos sobre inversión social, programas de protección social no contributiva, institucionalidad social en América Latina y el Caribe, juventud e inclusión social y de compromisos regionales y subregionales en materia de desarrollo social. A través de su división de desarrollo social, la CEPAL publica, actualiza y amplía estas bases que están a disposición de los gobiernos y del público en general. El Anuario Estadístico de América Latina y el Caribe es uno de los 6 informes anuales de la CEPAL. En él se presenta un conjunto de estadísticas básicas que caracterizan la situación económica, sociodemográfica y ambiental de la región referidas a un periodo en particular. El anuario estadístico constituye una referencia para quienes deseen contar con datos estadísticos descriptivos comparables entre países y en el tiempo. También contribuye a promover la generación y uso de información estadística internacionalmente comparable, oportuna y pertinente para la formulación, seguimiento y evaluación de políticas de desarrollo económico, social y ambiental en la región. Porque lo que no se mide no cuenta, la CEPAL insta a romper los silencios estadísticos y buscar más y mejores datos para avanzar hacia un desarrollo sostenible con igualdad. El Observatorio de Igualdad de Género de América Latina y el Caribe tiene como propósito contribuir al fortalecimiento de los mecanismos nacionales para el adelanto de las mujeres, poner a disposición pública información oficial de los gobiernos de la región y facilitar el seguimiento de los acuerdos internacionales de derechos de las mujeres. A través de este observatorio se da seguimiento a la situación de las mujeres en la región, en particular los avances relacionados con su autonomía física, económica y en la toma de decisiones y sus interrelaciones. ¿Qué información se puede encontrar en esta herramienta? Indicadores, informes y estudios, repositorio de leyes, análisis de políticas para la igualdad de género y recursos de difusión. ¿Sabías que, con información que entregan los países, la CEPAL creó un observatorio para conocer, analizar y difundir cómo planifican en la región de América Latina y el Caribe para lograr su desarrollo? Concentra en un solo sitio información sobre los sistemas nacionales de planificación de la región. Los sistemas incluyen los planes nacionales, subnacionales, como también marcos legales, actores gubernamentales y de la sociedad civil, mecanismos de coordinación e implementación y su vinculación con la Agenda 2030 y los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Es una plataforma abierta para quienes estén interesados en el ejercicio técnico, político y administrativo de la planificación para el desarrollo, en especial los gobiernos, parlamentarios, académicos, sector privado y la sociedad civil. Observatorio Regional de Planificación para el Desarrollo, de la mirada al análisis y conocimiento sobre la planificación del desarrollo en América Latina y el Caribe. Te invitamos a explorar el observatorio, descubrir y ser parte de la generación de conocimiento para planificar el desarrollo en observatorioplanificación.cepal.org. Al año 2018, 21 países han creado o designado un mecanismo coordinador para la implementación y seguimiento de la Agenda 2030 a través de una resolución o decreto. Otro aspecto importante es que más del 50% de las secretarías técnicas de estos mecanismos son las autoridades de planificación. Tienen el gran desafío de coordinar a los sectores, de convocar a los actores, de definir las estrategias y alianzas para el logro de los ODS y prepararse para los procesos de rendición de cuentas. Ello posiciona a la planificación como un medio de implementación de la Agenda 2030 y plantea grandes desafíos tanto para los funcionarios como para las prácticas de la administración pública. La Agenda 2030 nos desafía a planificar con una visión integrada y de largo plazo. El nuevo escenario global en tiempos de la pandemia provocada por el COVID-19 hace imperativo tomar medidas urgentes y evaluar los impactos de estas acciones. Para apoyar el seguimiento y monitoreo de avances a mediano y largo plazo, la CEPAL ha puesto en marcha el Observatorio COVID-19, un esfuerzo coordinado por la Comisión Regional con el apoyo de los coordinadores residentes de las Naciones Unidas, que presenta información actualizada sobre los anuncios de política de cada país y otros materiales de interés. El observatorio recopila y pone a disposición tanto las políticas públicas que los 33 países de la región latinoamericana y caribeña están tomando para limitar el impacto de la pandemia, como el análisis de los efectos económicos y sociales que éstas tendrán a nivel nacional y sectorial. En un mapa interactivo, los interesados podrán visualizar de manera clara las acciones realizadas por cada país. Estas están divididas en 5 grupos: medidas de contención, de salud, empleo, economía y educación. Visita el Observatorio COVID-19 de la CEPAL y accede a información actualizada de las medidas de política para enfrentar la crisis en la región. El Observatorio del Principio 10 en América Latina y el Caribe es una iniciativa de la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, CEPAL, por contribuir a un mejor conocimiento, difusión e implementación de los derechos de acceso a la información, la participación pública y el acceso a la justicia en asuntos ambientales consagrados en el Principio 10 de la Declaración de Río sobre Medio Ambiente y Desarrollo. El observatorio ofrece referencias destacadas de los derechos de acceso en leyes, políticas, jurisprudencia y tratados relativos a los 33 países de América Latina y el Caribe. Además, proporciona acceso a publicaciones, datos, mapas y recursos relacionados y cuenta con temáticas como biodiversidad, cambio climático, género, educación ambiental, minería, pueblos indígenas o defensores ambientales. Como centro de intercambio de información, el observatorio busca hacer un aporte a la implementación del Acuerdo Regional sobre el acceso a la información, la participación pública y el acceso a la justicia en asuntos ambientales en América Latina y el Caribe, Acuerdo de Escazú. El Observatorio COVID-19 en América Latina y el Caribe es una plataforma impulsada por la CEPAL a solicitud de la Comunidad de Estados Latinoamericanos y Caribeños CELAC. El observatorio rastrea las políticas públicas que los países de América Latina y el Caribe están implementando para limitar el impacto de la pandemia del COVID-19 en la región. A través de informes y documentos, ofrece análisis de los impactos económicos y sociales que estas políticas tendrán a nivel nacional y sectorial, además de apoyar su revisión y seguimiento a mediano y largo plazo. En un mapa interactivo, los interesados pueden visualizar de manera clara las acciones realizadas por cada país en materia de restricciones a desplazamientos, salud, economía, empleo, protección social, educación y género. Visita el Observatorio COVID-19 de la CEPAL y accede a información actualizada de las medidas de política para enfrentar la crisis en la región. Atendiendo el llamado del secretario general de las Naciones Unidas, Antonio Guterres, quien propuso el establecimiento de centros regionales de gestión del conocimiento, la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe y el Programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo, en conjunto con los fondos, programas y agencias especializadas del Sistema de las Naciones Unidas y la Oficina de Coordinación del Desarrollo para América Latina y el Caribe, se unieron para diseñar e implementar el portal de los ODS, una plataforma web que busca ser un factor clave para la coordinación y la disponibilidad de los activos regionales del Sistema de las Naciones Unidas en América Latina y el Caribe. Este centro de gestión del conocimiento en línea tiene por objeto servir de punto de encuentro y referencia para toda la información relacionada con los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, incluidas actividades, recursos de información, estadísticas, datos regionales, instrumentos analíticos específicos y productos de conocimiento desarrollados y proporcionados por el Sistema de Desarrollo de las Naciones Unidas en respuesta a las necesidades de los países miembros. Visita esta importante plataforma multiactor y conoce más acerca de este centro de gestión del conocimiento regional en línea.
In the very year that the United Nations launched the Decade for Action to ignite a more purposeful understanding of the part of the international community towards advancing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the world has confronted unprecedented change in the specter of COVID-19. The multi-dimensioned impact of this pandemic has served to dramatize the true scale of the vulnerability of the small, heavily indebted, undiversified economies of the Caribbean, and has forced creative exploration of every opportunity within the reach of our member states to secure urgent relief. The 2020 meetings of the Caribbean Development Roundtable and the Caribbean Development and Cooperation Committee will offer space for taking stock of the progress so far made in persuading the international community to extend this financial support needed, middle-income status notwithstanding, and to dialogue on those strategies that will take you from vulnerability to resilient development, from economic peril to recovery and dynamic growth. It is an opportunity to consider how together we strengthen partnerships for action that is responsive to the unique vulnerabilities of the Caribbean, and that assures tangible progress through the application of innovative problem solving in these precarious times.
El Observatorio de Desarrollo Social en América Latina y el Caribe es una herramienta regional de conocimiento de la CEPAL. Su creación responde a un mandato de la segunda reunión de la Conferencia Regional sobre Desarrollo Social de América Latina y el Caribe, cuando los Estados miembros le solicitaron a la CEPAL la conformación de un observatorio de desarrollo social que acompañe el diseño y la implementación de las políticas públicas y permita monitorear sus tendencias. De esta forma, el observatorio promueve el desarrollo integral de América Latina y el Caribe con enfoque de derechos y de igualdad a través del análisis de la situación social de la región, de las políticas públicas y de la asistencia técnica a los países que lo soliciten. El observatorio también integra un conjunto de plataformas digitales. Se destacan las bases de datos sobre inversión social, programas de protección social no contributiva, institucionalidad social en América Latina y el Caribe, juventud e inclusión social y de compromisos regionales y subregionales en materia de desarrollo social. A través de su división de desarrollo social, la CEPAL publica, actualiza y amplía estas bases que están a disposición de los gobiernos y del público en general. El Anuario Estadístico de América Latina y el Caribe es uno de los 6 informes anuales de la CEPAL. En él se presenta un conjunto de estadísticas básicas que caracterizan la situación económica, sociodemográfica y ambiental de la región referidas a un periodo en particular. El anuario estadístico constituye una referencia para quienes deseen contar con datos estadísticos descriptivos comparables entre países y en el tiempo. También contribuye a promover la generación y uso de información estadística internacionalmente comparable, oportuna y pertinente para la formulación, seguimiento y evaluación de políticas de desarrollo económico, social y ambiental en la región. Porque lo que no se mide no cuenta, la CEPAL insta a romper los silencios estadísticos y buscar más y mejores datos para avanzar hacia un desarrollo sostenible con igualdad. El Observatorio de Igualdad de Género de América Latina y el Caribe tiene como propósito contribuir al fortalecimiento de los mecanismos nacionales para el adelanto de las mujeres, poner a disposición pública información oficial de los gobiernos de la región y facilitar el seguimiento de los acuerdos internacionales de derechos de las mujeres. A través de este observatorio se da seguimiento a la situación de las mujeres en la región, en particular los avances relacionados con su autonomía física, económica y en la toma de decisiones y sus interrelaciones. ¿Qué información se puede encontrar en esta herramienta? Indicadores, informes y estudios, repositorio de leyes, análisis de políticas para la igualdad de género y recursos de difusión. ¿Sabías que, con información que entregan los países, la CEPAL creó un observatorio para conocer, analizar y difundir cómo planifican en la región de América Latina y el Caribe para lograr su desarrollo? Concentra en un solo sitio información sobre los sistemas nacionales de planificación de la región. Los sistemas incluyen los planes nacionales, subnacionales, como también marcos legales, actores gubernamentales y de la sociedad civil, mecanismos de coordinación e implementación y su vinculación con la Agenda 2030 y los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Es una plataforma abierta para quienes estén interesados en el ejercicio técnico, político y administrativo de la planificación para el desarrollo, en especial los gobiernos, parlamentarios, académicos, sector privado y la sociedad civil. Observatorio Regional de Planificación para el Desarrollo, de la mirada al análisis y conocimiento sobre la planificación del desarrollo en América Latina y el Caribe. Te invitamos a explorar el observatorio, descubrir y ser parte de la generación de conocimiento para planificar el desarrollo en observatorioplanificación.cl. Al año 2018, 21 países han creado o designado un mecanismo coordinador para la implementación y seguimiento de la Agenda 2030 a través de una resolución o decreto. Otro aspecto importante es que más del 50% de las secretarías técnicas de estos mecanismos son las autoridades de planificación. Tienen el gran desafío de coordinar a los sectores, de convocar a los actores, de definir las estrategias y alianzas para el logro de los ODS y prepararse para los procesos de rendición de cuentas. Ello posiciona a la planificación como un medio de implementación de la Agenda 2030 y plantea grandes desafíos tanto para los funcionarios como para las prácticas de la administración pública. La Agenda 2030 nos desafía a planificar con una visión integrada y de largo plazo. El nuevo escenario global en tiempos de la pandemia provocada por el COVID-19 hace imperativo tomar medidas urgentes y evaluar los impactos de estas acciones. Para apoyar el seguimiento y monitoreo de avances a mediano y largo plazo, la CEPAL ha puesto en marcha el Observatorio COVID-19, un esfuerzo coordinado por la Comisión Regional con el apoyo de los coordinadores residentes de las Naciones Unidas que presenta información actualizada sobre los anuncios de política de cada país y otros materiales de interés. El observatorio recopila y pone a disposición tanto las políticas públicas que los 33 países de la región latinoamericana y caribeña están tomando para limitar el impacto de la pandemia, como el análisis de los efectos económicos y sociales que éstas tendrán a nivel nacional y sectorial. En un mapa interactivo, los interesados podrán visualizar de manera clara las acciones realizadas por cada país. Estas están divididas en 5 grupos: medidas de contención, de salud, empleo, economía y educación. Visita el Observatorio COVID-19 de la CEPAL y accede a información actualizada de las medidas de política para enfrentar la crisis en la región. El Observatorio del Principio 10 en América Latina y el Caribe es una iniciativa de la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, CEPAL, por contribuir a un mejor conocimiento, difusión e implementación de los derechos de acceso a la información, la participación pública y el acceso a la justicia en asuntos ambientales consagrados en el Principio 10 de la Declaración de Río sobre Medio Ambiente y Desarrollo. El observatorio ofrece referencias destacadas de los derechos de acceso en leyes, políticas, jurisprudencia y tratados relativos a los 33 países de América Latina y el Caribe. Además, proporciona acceso a publicaciones, datos, mapas y recursos relacionados y cuenta con temáticas como biodiversidad, cambio climático, género, educación ambiental, minería, pueblos indígenas o defensores ambientales. Como centro de intercambio de información, el observatorio busca hacer un aporte a la implementación del Acuerdo Regional sobre el acceso a la información, la participación pública y el acceso a la justicia en asuntos ambientales en América Latina y el Caribe, Acuerdo de Escazú. El Observatorio COVID-19 en América Latina y el Caribe es una plataforma impulsada por la CEPAL a solicitud de la Comunidad de Estados Latinoamericanos y Caribeños CELAC. El observatorio rastrea las políticas públicas que los países de América Latina y el Caribe están implementando para limitar el impacto de la pandemia del COVID-19 en la región. A través de informes
Buenos días. Bienvenidas.
Good morning. Welcome all to this 63rd meeting of the presiding officers of the Conference on Women for Latin America and the Caribbean. Before the conference, we hold this closing session for the previous chair. We're going to have an opening session with the Executive Secretary of ECLAC, Regional Director of UN Women, and the chair of the previous conference, and the Minister of Gender of Argentina, who is taking over the chairmanship. I'll give the floor to José Manuel Salazar, Executive Secretary of ECLAC. Good morning, ministers, representatives of the member states of ECLAC, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the UN system, dear Maria Noel Baeza, Regional Director of UN Women, Minister Orellana, Women's Affairs and Gender Equity of Chile in her capacity as chair of the presiding officers of the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean, dear Ayelen Macina, Minister for Women, Gender and Diversity of Argentina, and representative of the host country of the 15th session of the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean that will be opening in a few hours. Representatives of intergovernmental agencies, distinguished representatives of NGOs and of civil society, particularly of the women's and feminist organizations. For me, it's an honor to open this 63rd meeting of presiding officers of the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. This meeting is a prelude to the 15th Regional Conference on Women that will be starting this afternoon, organized by ECLAC as the conference's secretariat in coordination with UN Women since the year 2020. We're very pleased about that. On this occasion, I would like to underscore the work carried out jointly throughout all these months by ECLAC, UN Women, and the governments of Chile and Argentina in preparing for this intergovernmental meeting that is indeed essential for promoting political dialogue and cooperation to transform the development model in Latin America and the Caribbean with gender equality, with inclusion and sustainability to move towards a care society. In this regard, I would like to acknowledge the work done by all the teams involved and thank them for the huge job they've done that no doubt has allowed us to consolidate our roadmap towards gender equality in the region. Friends, as you well know, I took office as Secretary General of ECLAC a month ago, and I hereby reiterate that among my priority work proposals for ECLAC, gender equality and the care society play an important role. And therefore, for me, it is very important to participate in this presiding officers meeting and then in the Regional Conference on Women. We are really willing to continue with a very significant work that's been carried out for decades already. And nowadays it's more important than ever, but it has been bearing fruit already. With this meeting of presiding officers triggers a fundamental instance to continue engaging in conversations, agreeing on and building agreements that will translate into specific policies to be implemented in each country, territory, region, so as to turn the autonomy and rights of women and girls in all their diversity into a reality. So as to be clear about the starting point of this 15th Regional Conference, and as a way of being accountable for the fruitful work done, this meeting of presiding officers will hear the report by the chair of the presiding officers of this Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean, Minister Antonio Orellana. We recognize the great job done by the government of Chile as chair of the presiding officers in the last 3 years, promoting and coordinating innovative proposals so that these advance true equality, providing continuity to and promoting the implementation of the Santiago commitments and the regional gender agenda in its entirety. We would like to very specially underscore Chile's leadership in promoting and chairing the Regional Alliance for the Digitalization of Women in Latin America and the Caribbean to achieve effective connectivity for women. In the last few decades, Latin America and the Caribbean has made significant progress with 430 million people connected to the internet in 2019, which accounts for 67% of the population. Nonetheless, 4 out of every 10 women in the region are not connected and or cannot afford connectivity, which is equal to over 89 million women. This alliance faces a challenge of narrowing gender gaps in ICTs regarding access, skills development and use by women and girls, and promoting the full participation of women in the digital economy. Within this context, ECLAC, in coordination with UN Women, is providing technical assistance to several countries such as Chile, Uruguay, Panama, and Costa Rica, just to name a few. Under the country's chairmanship, the Regional Fund in support of women's and feminist organizations was set up to reinforce the work of these organizations in support of women's equality and autonomy. Under Chile's chairmanship of the presiding officers, we have also been able to reflect on what the regional gender agenda entails for public policies in the region's countries and celebrate its 45th anniversary last June. On that occasion, we celebrated 45 years of work in support of gender equality. Equality concerning rights in rules and laws, and also regarding opportunities, events, and outcomes. These are only a few examples of 3 years of tireless work within a national regional context of cascading crises, from the health crisis to the economic and environmental ones, and of course, the care crisis too. However, we have made progress in achieving policies and initiatives to achieve women's autonomy in its 3 dimensions: economic, physical, and in decision-making. An approach to common issues with a gender and intersectional perspective has been reinforced. We have promoted proposals for a transformative recovery in equal and sustainable conditions. Besides the above outcomes, we recently participated in ECLAC's 39th session that reinforced the synergy of the work carried out by the Regional Conference on Women with other ECLAC subsidiary bodies, such as the Statistical Conference of the Americas. In this regard, I wish to highlight the momentum of these last few years to leave aside statistical silence and generate data and information, allowing equality and sustainability to be at the center of the agendas, policies, and of development at large. As discussed during the above-mentioned session, the region calls for transformative and bold policies, offering realistic and pragmatic solutions to its acute economic, social, and environmental inequalities and gaps. Not only do we have to focus on what to do, but also on how to do it. That is what the presiding officers have been doing, showing the way forward on what to do and identifying specific actions on how to do it. We have also strengthened coordination of the Regional Conference on Women with other UN fora, particularly the Commission on the Status of Women. No doubt my colleague Mariano Elbaeza will address this effort that resulted from a UN-ECLAC partnership, friends. With this backdrop and our momentum as a region, we will have a chance today to hear about the work done by Chile as a country that currently chairs the presiding officers. At this point, the Secretariat will present the organization of work for the 15th Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. Ana Huesme Garcia, Director of the ECLAC Gender Division, who you very well know, will share information on what will be going on these days at the conference, and will also comment briefly on the documents we have prepared. Latin America and the Caribbean are facing a complex scenario. We are experiencing a true development crisis that calls for urgent responses from all decision-making stakeholders. In this crisis, ECLAC has evidenced an overrepresentation of women in unemployment, informality, and poverty, and in care work. We thus value the work that Chile has been doing as chair of the presiding officers and the vice presidents to overcome structural inequality challenges. At the advent of the 15th Regional Conference on Women, we wish to highlight the coordinated work and huge efforts of Argentina to host this conference on the Society of Care, which is a cornerstone to transform the current development model. We welcome you all to this 63rd meeting of the presiding office of the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your words, ECLAC Executive Secretary, and now Maria Noel Baeza, Director for the Americas and the Caribbean of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality, UN Women. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Secretary, thank you for having mentioned our partnership, and indeed, we're going to go deep down into it. Dear ministers, Minister Orellana from Chile, Minister Massina from Argentina, these are very significant times when you're taking over, right? But I really want to greet you all, most particular the ministers, directors, and chairs of the different gender entities, and wish you all a very wonderful conference. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a powerful statement we're going to issue. That will be the Buenos Aires Declaration. I would like to tell you what we've been doing all these days in the city of Buenos Aires. The Feminist Forum that was held yesterday was amazingly attended by over 1,500 people, self-managed. We've cooperated with them, but it's been the civil society itself that has decided on the structure of the forum, and they've had a very interesting declaration that will be read tomorrow at the conference. This means how brilliant, how wonderful the feminist movement is, and the civil society organizations that come from over 30 countries in the region, which means that when there is a will, there is a way to work together with all the entities and institutions and gender organizations, and naturally with ECLAC and UN Women and the whole UN system. We'll have almost all the UN agencies. We have with us the SFIN Executive Secretary, so many organizations, and all of us pursuing the same goal, the same objective, to reach gender equality that we really want, and to manage the care issue to be brought forward at the political agenda and political budget. I would also like to tell you and to talk to you about something else, and this is that this forum is again a dimension of the regional conference, which, I mean, is 45 years old by now. As you know, June will be the 45th anniversary of the regional conference, and civil society has always been a very important guest to listen to and to embrace in this right now, because, you know, it's been 3 years without meeting in person after all. It's wonderful to see how the forum was able to include different generations. There were very young people. There were all sorts of women from all kinds and types. It began with a very significant event of the indigenous people that was summoned, and wishing the conference to do very well. It was wonderful to meet them, to be there with them, because they truly have all that zest and energy and cosmovision, and they invited us to participate in these events. And we've also had diverse women with different disabilities, sexual diversity, Afro-descendants, women of all sorts of diversities, because women in Latin America are diverse, and I think this has shown in this forum more than ever. I had the honor of being with the minister, with Anna. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. And I also wanted to tell you that the UN Women team that have been working under Cecilia Alemani, our regional deputy director, interim rep in Argentina too. I mean, Cecilia and all UN team, let's give them a good clap, a good round. They certainly deserve it. The UN Women in Argentina has been crucial, absolutely instrumental, and we have to reach out and thank them all. And I also would like to tell you that for this time, we've had a parliamentary forum upon the initiative of the Argentine government, over 100 parliamentarians from 19 countries. This is a historical moment, because we need parliaments to establish these legal frameworks and systems that will allow us to reach integral care systems. I'm pretty sure that all the ministers present here will celebrate the fact that parliaments are our partners at trying to establish these care systems that are truly significant for all of us. And the Parliamentary Forum has just read their statement that will also be shared by all of you. Very significant to see that this is not just an executive branch initiative, but that we have the legislature with us, supporting us, celebrating gender equality. This is a drive that we wish care systems to achieve, and this women in general. And we also have young people. It's very important for us to pay attention to them. We will heed them in all the side events, as you've seen. There's lots of young people that they've met over 70 young people from 21 countries in the region to get together and talk. What do care systems mean for their lives? I mean, they're young after all, and they don't have the experience of being moms, but they know what care means because they've been cared for. It's very important to listen to them, to see what their proposals are, to pay heed to them at the time that decision-making is at stage. So we're going to listen to the young people tomorrow. And last but not least, with the okay of the current presidency of the Chilean government, we've coordinated all these activities. And finally, I'd also like to tell you about the regional fund supporting organizations and women and feminist movements in Latin America, created in the last conference in Santiago, in Chile. This is an initiative that was designed in the framework of the Montevideo Conference, and finally it was created with a contribution by the Mexican government, a contribution too by UN Women. And the important thing is that we have this fund, which is a seed fund, and several projects in the pipeline. And we've got over 250 applications when we called upon different organizations regionally. And we have 17 organizations from 10 different countries working on projects for the fund. So we certainly have to celebrate this. It's been fantastic to have with this fund supporting women movements. Hopefully more countries will join in, that they're willing to make a financial contribution. And we've also had a round with donor countries to see if we manage to get the attention of them in this important infrastructure. And we have 10 countries in the region that have benefited from these grassroots organizations: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Haiti, Honduras, Mexico, Trinidad, Tobago, and Venezuela. Considering the importance of keeping this mechanism, this funding, innovative funding mechanism active for the civil society, at UN Women we've held an intense advocacy campaign with donors, with regional banks, and we hope we'll be able to use more resources in 2023. This is a very important fund both for ECLAC and UN Women and all of you, because this permanent dialogue, this permanently listening to what the civil society is doing, which are the challenges they've identified, it's all very important to food for thought for the regional conference and for the different statements you issue. So I would like to invite you, as I was saying, to join us in these achievements so that on Wednesday, November 9th, in the afternoon, there will be a special session in this respect. Finally, I'd like to thank all the ECLAC team led by Ana Güemes. It's been a pleasure. It is a pleasure to work with Ana as the director of the Division for Gender Affairs. But as the team said, we're a team. After all, that's what we are. And this is so important. the horizon ahead of us, the utopias we're in store, we all share them, and we're working together. And I feel so lucky to have, for you, Mr. Secretary, also to support this approach, this work done on partnerships. And of course, we have other UN agencies joining us, and we will keep on doing it because we're here to serve you. And I believe that working together, we serve all the countries so much better. So I'm so thankful. And as you said, Mr. Secretary, the legal framework for women, this is fundamental for us. We're the secretariat of this global commission that takes place in New York every year in March. Next year, the issue will be technology, gender and technology. We'll be there contributing a paper we're producing together with ECLAC, and at the first presiding officers session that the minister will be presiding over in January or February, sometime then, which is also preparatory for the CDW. There will be two together, right? Two in one. But the important thing is that our region will always be there, issuing a powerful declaration reflecting the consensus in the region, and this will be voiced at CDW and the global meeting. And I think technology is crucial. It's what we need to have decent work so that we have more women engaged in technology, and hopefully we can reach conclusions that will show in the globally acknowledged conclusions. So thank you very much, everybody. And I would also like to thank particularly Luis Yañez and all Luis's team, Maria Eugenia Jimena. We've worked ever so well with them. And of course, the Argentine government, our wonderful host that has enabled us being here today. So, Mrs. Minister, thank you very much too. We thank the words of the UN Women Director, and now the President of the 14th Women Conference, Antonia Arellana, Minister of Women's Affairs from Chile.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Executive Secretary, Madam Minister, Regional Director, and also Anna Westmith, Gender Director, heads of the advancement mechanisms and of all the agencies in the region, and also to the members of the multilateral and social organizations of women's and feminist movements and civil society. It's a pleasure to address you. We are very pleased because after many months of work, we can hold this 63rd meeting of presiding officers, but also this new regional conference on women in Latin America and the Caribbean. Let's say, I am going to give you a summary in the next part of the session, but as an outgoing chair, I wanted to say that we have, after 3 exceptional years with a pandemic and with this descaling of protection measures against COVID-19, the agenda stemming from the Santiago Declaration very soon was hit by this phenomenon of the pandemic, which is still in place. And as the Executive Secretary said, the cascading crisis that all this brought about. So this digitization agenda very quickly turned into an agenda in response to an emergency. It became an emergency digital agenda. We'll give you further details later about this. And at this new conference, let's hope we can set forth proposals to overcome this crisis. I would like to say that we all have a great responsibility here, those who represent our states. the regional agenda on gender and women in Latin America and the Caribbean has been in place for 45 years. It's older than me. But beyond that, it was adopted at a time when our countries experienced very different realities. And reviewing the position document with which we've come to this conference, you can see how since 1977 onwards, there have been lots of conversations on care. We have the tremendous responsibility to bear in mind the diversity of our governments, but without restricting its expansion, that all the activities do not come to a halt. And in these 45 years, regardless of our origin and age, all Latin American and Caribbean women can agree that we live better lives than our grandmothers. Regardless of our age, we live better lives, and that's not just by chance. That wasn't given to us. It's a blend of domestic policies, but also of the underpinning of advancements in multilateral organizations. So our main challenge nowadays at this time of cascading crisis that have been happening for 45 years to question all what we've obtained. So we must consolidate what we've obtained so far and try and expand all actions so as to exit the crisis. Hopefully there will be unity and diversity to work on as from this afternoon. So I want to thank all the ECLAC team, UN Women, and also the hotel team, who we've been pestering in the last few days, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Argentina that have been supporting us in all this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Orellana. And now, the representative of our host country of this 15th Regional Conference, Ayelen Massinina, Minister for Women, Gender and Diversity of Argentina. Minister, go ahead, please. Thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome you all. Good afternoon. Thanks to the presiding officers and this session that have supported right from the start and this short management efforts, because I've only taken office very recently, the Minister for Women and Gender and Diversity of Argentina. So I wish to join in the words of thanks of my colleagues, the Executive Secretary, and I wish to thank ECLAC and UN Women, and to thank the team at the ministry that pushed on and moved forward together with Chile, the organization of this 15th Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I'd like to join in these words of thanks and praise, because I believe it's very important to be able to tell you that new authorities, very new authorities, have joined in, so that all the efforts made up to now will make you, each one of you, properly welcomed and embraced, so to say. We reach out to you during the conference, posing these issues, and a central issue, which is absolutely important, that refers to the care society. I don't want to take too much time. I just wanted to thank you, Antonia, the minister from Chile, with whom we shared some time yesterday, a woman full of energy, absolutely young, with whom we've been able to get together and talk about the work that needs to go on. The Ministry for Women, Gender and Diversity is doing such a good job regarding gender and equality. The idea is to keep on with these policies, embrace them, reinforce them with all nations, with a core part which would be the cross-cutting issues that are cross-cutting for women and also refer to diversity, and find us here today in this 15th Regional Conference focusing basically on care society, talking about equity, social justice, the distribution of goods, certain words that are not new, but that as countries and a region we need to take ownership of, the co-responsibility in a shared way. We have to take ownership as a civil society, as a state, as a market, when we look at the finance and the economics, I mean, this is absolutely cross-cutting. All these issues are. So I don't want to take up too much time. I want to thank you, Antonia, for these 3 years during which you led and were the chair. I noted, Antonia, yesterday how emotional she was. She was the minister in San Luis, a very tiny province in Argentina, but the more women we see and the more diversities we see in important decision-making positions, it's wonderful. We become emotional. And when we have a common agenda with brotherly countries where we see predominantly, first and foremost in those agendas, equality, social justice, sovereignty, financial autonomy, employability, and ever so many issues that demand that we take ownership by filling in these decision-making positions. And as we were saying a moment ago when we were talking over this with our colleagues, the importance of being here in this conference, of heeding each other, of sharing the experiences, of networking, of continuing thinking in society, and for each one of us, the society which we expect to achieve, a more fairer society that we can all live in together, thinking of childhood, adolescence, diversity, and taking into consideration the very difficult 2 pandemic years that clearly worsened the gender inequalities and that need to be the focus of our attention and of the scene, not just the care, but also so many other issues that need to unite us as regions, as countries, and especially as women. Antonia, thank you so much. To the presiding officers, thank you so much. I felt at home, I felt supported, and this also refers to the solidarity of each of my colleagues with the way you've all reached out and the need for meeting together again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Minister. So now we must adopt the provisional agenda, and then the report of the chair and the report of the Secretariat on the organization of work for the forthcoming conference. If there are no comments, we deem them adopted, and I will give the floor now to Minister Orellana so that she provides us with the report for this 15th conference, sorry. Thank you, Secretary. This report highlights the main activities carried out within the framework of the Regional Conference on Women, Latin America and the Caribbean, and the main outcomes achieved since the 38th session in October 2022 to date. During the 14th Regional Conference in January 2020, first conference held jointly by ECLAC and UN Women, Chile as a state took over the chairmanship of this forum. The Santiago Commitment was thus adopted that establishes the need to take all necessary measures to accelerate the effective implementation of the Platform of Action of Beijing and the regional gender agendas, strengthening institutionality and gender architecture by providing greater hierarchy to mechanism for advancement of women and for mainstreaming the gender perspective. Among the 48 points of the commitment, we can highlight agreements to eradicate gender-based violence, provide universal access to comprehensive health services, sexual and reproductive rights, foster the labor participation of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, implement policies and programs that contribute to a healthy and active aging that include the gender perspective, reducing the salary gap and increasing the representation of women in decision-making positions so as to achieve parity, democracy, among others. It's important to highlight that for the reasons well known by all during the rest of 2020, no further meetings of the regional conference were held. At the 60th meeting of presiding officers held online in February 2021, the delegations reported on progress made in starting up the Santiago Commitment, taking into account the COVID-19 pandemic, and there was a special consultation session before the 65th session of the Committee on the Status of Women. As a result of this, a declaration was adopted highlighting the participation of women in decision-making in a full and effective manner in public life, and also the elimination of violence to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. Among the agreements of the 60th meeting of presiding officers and under the leadership of Chile, the decision was decided. There was a decision made to promote the Regional Alliance for Digitalization of Women in Latin America and the Caribbean, which aims at reducing gender gaps in ICTs in terms of access, skill development, and use by girls and women to promote full participation of women in the digital economy. At the 61st meeting of the presiding officers held online in September 21, government defined the main topic bringing us here today, the care society as a horizon for sustainable recovery with gender equality. And the roadmap was adopted before this 15th conference, and also the government of Chile submitted a report on progress made in the Regional Alliance for the Digitalization of Women. The creation of the virtual platform Todos Conectadas, an initiative public-private initiative launched in January 2022, together with UN Women, Microsoft, MasterCard, and IDOS Global, with which we hope to provide tools to develop skills and digital competencies and promote national programs to improve access to women to digital technologies according to the needs of each country, with the technical support of ECLAC in coordination with UN Women. As well pointed out before, this agenda that was promoted first as an agenda of social participation in technologies and digitization turned into an emergency agenda when, as from the pandemic, digitization turned into the environment for social development as an ecosystem for micro businesses based on the problems with labor insertion, on these setbacks there were. So we had to reorient it based on the circumstances. We also reported on the launch of the Regional Fund to support women's and feminist organizations, as pointed out by the Director of UN Women, with the purpose of supporting with economic resources the financing of projects by women's and feminist organizations in Latin America and the Caribbean to contribute to achieving the gender equality and other objectives proposed. And at the 62nd meeting of presiding officers held online on the 26th and 27th of January 2022, we continued working on preparations for this 15th conference and informed on progress made in the Regional Alliance for Digitalization. We updated the Regional Fund for supporting women's and feminist organizations and women, and 250 were selected in the region. There was a new regional consultation before the 66th session of the Commission on the Legal Status of Women. And as a result of the consultation session, a declaration was adopted, which was already presented in March this year, as a contribution of the region to the global multilateral discussion on achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women, girls, and advocates, which is very significant for our region within climate crisis policies and programs, environment and risk reduction programs too. During this period, we decided to hold a special meeting of the presiding officers held on the 22nd and 23rd of June 2022. This was a hybrid meeting. Some of you were with us, and there we celebrated the 45th anniversary of the gender agenda that was set up during the first regional conference on integration of women in economic development and social development in Latin America, La Habana, 1977. Within this space, we highlighted the contribution of this agenda, and we exchanged positions for preparing today's conference. This is what we can inform as chairs as a result of these 3 years in office. In the midst of the pandemic, but also with the goodwill of adjusting all our agreements, our progress, and all our decisions to the events that we had to face. We thank all countries who participated online or in person, and we hope to continue along the same path.
Thank you very much, the chair of the conference, for this report. And now I would like the director of Ana Wehnest of the Division for Gender Affairs of ECLAC to submit the organization of work of the next days to come, ever since 4 p.m. Thank you, Angeline Mancina, our host on behalf of the Argentine government, Antonia Orejanas, Minister chairing the meeting on behalf of Chile, Maria Nael Baeza, co-equippers, because she's our co-equippers. We co-create lots of innovations, and of course, Mr. Jose Manuel Salazar, the Executive Secretary, and Mr. Yáñez, ministers, representatives of member states who are ECLAC members of the UN system, distinguished representatives of civil society organizations. It is for me an honor to be able to share with you the organization of work of the 15th Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. As the ministers pointed out, the Executive Secretary, too, these have been 3 years, critical years, cascading crisis regarding the development model that has deepened the structural obstacles for gender inequality and the obstacles for the autonomy of women in our region. As you remember, surely, in the 61st meeting of the Presiding Office, which we held on September 29 and 32 years ago, you people, the member states, agreed as a main issue of this conference. We said care society, a horizon for sustainable recovery with gender equality. And ever since, we've been working together, intensely together with the government of Chile, the government of Argentina, UN Women, but also we've also been working with all the UN system, with you people in the different countries, the mechanisms to advance women, an exchange process, dialogues. And regarding this idea that Minister Massina put forward and that I really enjoy, and this is how we articulate, how we network and knit the fabric of the listening processes at a community level, national and regional level, processes which mean collective building upon in a participatory way. And I would like to highlight in the report by Minister Orellana, which barely accounts of the huge effort made by Chile in the chair when we got the commitment and we were privileged to support this work. That's why it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I don't know how you felt it, but let me leave the script apart. This is the very first time that we've met after 3 years at the core of the UN in reaching out warmly in an embrace, respecting our diversities, our contributions, and it's such a pleasure. And I'd also like to tell you that for me, it's a privilege to support this conference for the very first time as the Director of Gender Affairs of ECLAC. I've supported the last 20 years the work and the growth of mechanisms to advance women, the networking, the fabric woven for peace, justice, equality in the region. And I believe the legacy As Minister Orellana pointed out, the legacy received is a 45-year-old legacy of work, contributions, a collective building upon, and this is how we made it. So it's an honor. All the work done to get together today in this meeting, the team that has been painstakingly working all along, that is the team that is here present, right? You'll meet them from the whole ECLAC, working together for this to materialize together with UN Women, and naturally the wonderful host efforts of the Argentine government. Maria Noel Baeza pointed it out. The conference actually began yesterday with the preparatory activities, the Feminist Forum and the Parliamentary Forum that was held for the very first time upon the initiative of the Argentine government, which has been a space for convergence to move on in regulatory frameworks for gender equality, fostering this that we all want, the policies and systems for care. Nowadays, at 4 p.m. today, we'll be holding the opening session of the conference, and we'll be having with us the president of the Argentine nation, Mr. Alberto Fernandez, the executive secretary of ECLAC, José Manuel Salazar Chirinax, Maria Noel Baeza, regional director of UN Women, Claudia Mojica, Res Rep of UN in Argentina, who will read a message of the UN Secretary General, and Ministers Antonia Orellana and Ayelen Massina. Subsequently, we'll adopt the presiding officer's session and all the regional documents. You all have it all in your folders. It's been made public, disclosed in our website. The conference will be in person, but we will be transmitting it, broadcasting it through our media, social media, and under ECLAC's channel. And let me point out that tomorrow we'll be beginning, and we'll also have a cultural activity offered by the Argentine government. So tomorrow, we'll be beginning by looking into the position paper prepared by the ECLAC Secretariat as a working document that you all have available. The Care Society, a horizon for sustainable recovery with gender equality, that will be presented by our executive secretary and moderated by the Minister of Women, Gender and Diversity. And allow me for congratulating you upon creating that ministry. I mean to say, we're being hosted by a country with a national gender structure, not only national, not only federal, but also provincial and municipal. So it's really something. This paper reflects, as Minister Orellana said, several decades of debates at the presiding officer's sessions, your contributions, the data, inputs, supplemented by ECLAC, and focusing on the interdependence of people, productive processes, society, and the environment. It also poses the idea of the right to care as part of the commitments phrased in international treaties and moves on upon thinking of focusing on welfare and the sustainability of life in society. The paper is an invitation to ECLAC member states to build upon public policies, reversing gender gaps and articulating equality in a sustainable way. That is the common denominator of our work. In the afternoon, there will be a high-level dialogue about the Care Society in Latin America and the Caribbean, where we will hear comments. I'm not going to go into the program itself because we don't have the time, but you have it there printed. So in that program, we will have the interventions by the delegations that will be present at the conference. On Wednesday, 2 high-level panels. The first one, funding of care, moderated by Maria Inés Castillo, Minister for Social Development of Panama, and we will hold a joint presentation prepared by UN Women and ECLAC. In the afternoon, we will keep on, it will be at 11:30. From 11:30 to 1, we'll go on with the planet, caring for the planet, a second panel to be moderated by Alicia Caravaca, the executive chair of the Women's Institute, INAMU, from Costa Rica. Now, from 3 to 4:30, we will be putting forward the document Breaking the Statistical Silence to Achieve Gender Equality by 2030, where we are analyzing the implementation of the access on the information system for the Montevideo strategy to implement the gender agenda in the framework of sustainable development. The idea that we're talking over with you is that we need to go into the 10 pillars of the Montevideo strategy to be able to put forward the status and challenges ahead of us. This panel will be moderated by Clemenza Caraballi, the Presidential Counselor for Women Identity in Colombia. And we're very proud because it's the first joint document produced by 2 regional conferences of ECLAC, the Women Conference and the America Statistical Conference that, as Mr. Salazar has already pointed out, we've been working systematically at this, working for development, right? And how to move ahead, looking forward to care society, what information we have, what are the inputs, what are the innovations, and how do we move forward. The last day of the conference, Friday 7th, we will hold a round table on co-responsibility for care that will be moderated by the Minister of Women Affairs of Honduras, Doris Garcia Paredes. And all along these dialogues and panels, we've attempted at keeping some time to hearing you people, the governments, the states, ECLAC, to consider all your voices all along these panels, the participation of the civil society, as well as of movements for diversity, and naturally state ministers, the international banks. We will have the CEDAW former chair. We've tried to put together an interesting program and allowing us to move forward on the basis of a constructive dialogue and giving the different organizations time to express themselves. We will then have some space to consider the agreements of the conference. As we pointed out, we're supporting the Chilean chair and the Argentine chair at drafting these commitments, and subsequently we will make it at the closing session. In short, the conference, the Regional Conference on Women, is the main intergovernmental forum of the UN regarding women's rights, gender equality in the region. And it will be supplemented by approximately 32 side events where many of you will be present and participating. It has been organized by ECLAC as the technical secretariat together with UN Women ever since 2021. And it's a conference with big involvement of governments, the UN family, and civil society organizations, in particular feminist organizations and women organizations. This is an opportunity to put together commitments, to get contributions, and basically to, as our executive secretary says, look for bold and innovative solutions. Care as a solution, care society is a solution, where we all need to find an organization, a social organization articulating equality and sustainability, caring for people, caring for carers, self-caring, and of course the protection and caring for the planet. So this would be, Mr. Secretary, our idea, and all the inputs, you have them both physically in your binders, and there's been a big editorial effort, let me tell you, for everything to be ready. It's an ambitious conference, consistent with lots of inputs, and we hope the information will prove useful. And it's also available in our website, the website that the conference itself has. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. There are two matters to share here with the delegations of interest to the delegations. Firstly, the election of the presiding officers this afternoon at 4 p.m. at the opening of the conference. We'll only elect the chair, and in the next 2 days, we'll be hearing about those delegations that are interested in sitting as presiding officers together with Argentina. So far, we've received expressions of interest from a few countries, and the Secretariat has taken due note of this. You don't have to do it formally. You can just verbally convey your interest in the next couple of days. We've received expressions of interest from Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, Bolivia, and Venezuela. Until this morning, that is. So this is open to you. Just let us know. And on Friday, when we adopt the Buenos Aires commitment, we would elect the rest of the presiding officers. And as to the Buenos Aires commitment, which is a topic of interest to the delegations, I'm going to recap information from last week and tell you what's going to happen during the meeting. Under the guidance of Chile's chairmanship and the incoming chair, Argentina, on the 21st of October, the Secretariat sent out a draft zero that could be included in the Buenos Aires commitment. We sent it out to all organizations and delegations, and we asked for comments by the 25th of October, new wording, specificities, and many sent in their comments. And on the 28th of October, on Zoom, we held a small working meeting in which other delegations also provided comments that they would be sending. On just a sec. On the 31st of October, we sent out to the delegations a draft zero with lots of brackets identifying what delegations had made what contributions. You have all received this in your emails. It was sent out in English and Spanish. If you haven't seen it, please let us know, and we'll send it again. You'll realize that there are supplementary comments, contradictory ones, and others that amend the text. So among all delegations, we'll have to make an effort to achieve consensus. We've provided for 2 working sessions to this effect. The first will be on Wednesday, November the 9th, 3 hours from 5 to 8 p.m. in the Retiro rooms B and C. Only 3 hours, that is. We're going to have interpretation into English and Spanish. This is a first 3-hour meeting so as to collect the your suggestions or documents and see how we move forward in building consensus. And then a second session on Thursday from 11 to 2 p.m. in the Retiro rooms B and C2. This is information I wanted to share with you as to the election of presiding officers, and there is conversation or dialogue so as to outline the Buenos Aires commitment. Are there any questions from the delegations? In that case, we can adjourn this meeting. But first, I would give the floor to Minister Orellana and Minister Massina. If they, Mexico, yes, you're recognized. Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate you for all this preparatory work, allowing us to be here today in person. Mexico has given significant steps forward to promote equality and narrow gender inequality gaps. Moving towards substantial equality also calls for promoting the representation of women in leadership positions. And we've been the leaders in taking measures to increase the participation of women in public life. We have always been committed to moving forward equality and the human rights of women, adolescents, and girls in all their diversity at international fora. The first international conference on women was held in Mexico in 1975. And it's an honor to see that 50 years after this conference, we can announce the interests of the country in hosting the next regional conference on women in commemoration of this occasion on which the UN announced its commitment to work to support equality between men and women. We submit this to your consideration.
Thank you very much to the Mexico delegation. And now Colombia and Costa Rica. Colombia, please go ahead. Good morning. Colombia thanks the ECLAC director, to the Chilean chair for all the job done, and to Argentina. We thank Argentina for the job and the efforts, the wonderful welcoming we've got, and all the work that has been put together for this. And Colombia wishes to say that we're committed to obtaining gender equality and to working with the rest of the countries to achieve it. We're in a process for reinsertion in Latin America, and we do hope we can count on all the help of the member states that are present here. And we wanted to express our interest in hosting the conference after Mexico. Thank you very much. We have a road to walk, right? But now, for the next 3 years, Argentina will be the chair, and this will be starting at 4 p.m. Costa Rica? Good morning. We wanted to thank Argentina also for being such wonderful host, especially thanking ECLAC for bringing forward this issue of care in the framework. And we would like to highlight the importance of the progress made, the efforts made to guarantee care as a right and as a fundamental element for social and economic development, because we need to recognize that care is work. And it's a very feminized, so to say, work and a generator of inequalities. So by focusing on this issue, that demands to face challenges. Costa Rica in the last decade has made programs to sanction public policies in a more equalitarian and inclusive society. We have a network for study and development of these issues and a national care policy supported by a national law for care for the elderly and for people that are dependent, that are independent. So this provides for transforming mechanisms with the perspective of launching social co-responsibility and human rights, taking into consideration diversities and vulnerabilities as required and who need care. Throughout the network we've put together, institutional and regarding mechanisms, INAMU actually is the National Institute for the Promotion of Women's Rights, are significantly present, and we are fostering as a governing body for policies, all this. We call upon everybody to put together efforts to avoid setbacks, to keep moving on these historical roads that we wish to walk along as a region and to progress in the equality and the rights of women. Thank you very much. Thank you, Costa Rica. Honduras. Thank you very much for allowing us to take the floor. Good morning. Honduras is only too pleased for being a part of this very important space. After 12 years, we always say so when we attend an event such as this one, of this type, with women like you. We can't conceal our happiness, our pleasure, and telling you how happy and pleased we are of meeting again with the very best purpose ahead of us, which would be to build upon this society, precisely a society restoring the rights of the human rights of women. And obviously, I can't leave out the emotion of conveying the greetings of the first woman president of Honduras, the only woman president in the region right now, Iris Yomara Castro Sarmiento. It's her that is taking ownership of this event, and the women in Honduras have began a historical stage. We're part of it. It's historical because we had never had a woman president after 200 years governed by men. And we believe this woman president is making a difference, and it's a historical thing. Taking the decisions when they're needed without lingering and not deciding. And I'm talking to you as a first secretary woman, a state secretary for women affairs in Honduras. Certainly, if we get a woman president, that would be inconsistent to put off the issue of women. But after 24 years of women organizations and feminist organizations kept demanding the creation of a state secretariat, and that wasn't enough. She's increased our budget progressively, engaged as she is to making our organization more robust. And besides, let me tell you that the optional protocol of CEDAW, which was also there waiting in a drawer, put away for over 30 years, she put it forward, and now it's under the legislature. And I believe this needs to be publicly recognized. Our president needs to be Iris Yomara Castro Sarmiento, should be publicly recognized. And let me tell you that the Honduras delegation is represented only by women. 8 women of the strategic planning secretariat, also created by our president, of the health secretariat, of the education secretariat, and of the social development secretariat. This is a delegation with a purpose, and this is to gather the best inputs for this purpose of this conference, where we are addressing precisely care as an issue. We expect to generate positions so that women in our country may live decently as they should. We hope that these goals are achieved, and rightly so. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity of doing so, and allow me to reiterate to all the ministers present, because we here at the podium, you see me on my own, but tomorrow we will get more to join us, and we do hope to have the opportunity of holding bilateral meetings supported by these countries that have moved on regarding care systems. We need to build bridges, we need to network so that our women, with our love, may feel that we're here for them. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Honduras delegation. I don't think anybody else wants to take the floor. If so, I'll ask Minister Morejana and Minister Massina to close with some closing words the session. Minister? Thank you very much, Secretary. Thank you very much to all the delegations that have taken the floor. What you're telling us, all you've said, and all the news and the offering to host our next meetings. I don't want to take up more time because I've already said everything I had to say. But I wanted to thank you once and again. I wanted to thank ECLAC, UN Women, each and everybody, all their officials, members, the regional host office in Santiago, always open to our ministry. I believe the issues we will be addressing in this conference are, and I do hope that just as elsewhere and other times in Latin America and the Caribbean, are positions that will be addressed worldwide. As we said, Latin America and the Caribbean representing women, let us show the world from Latin America and the Caribbean the path for financial recovery with equality and sustainability after the COVID-19 crisis, which is absolutely making care a central issue. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. And to conclude, Ayelen Massina might like to close the session. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the delegations, Mexico, Honduras, Costa Rica, Colombia. I wish to thank and join in Antonia's words of thanks to ECLAC, to the UN, to all our colleagues from the ministry, and for you people as countries, as regions, to be able to be here present and actually allowing us to voice our thoughts, to open up to dialogue, and to design the very best strategies to achieve the society that we really are all looking forward to as women, with the children, with the adolescents, the feminist movements, the different organizations, and the different issues that we're addressing today, but have been with us forever. But it's good that today we can put them forward, include them in political agendas, in public agendas, as well as, and let me go back a moment to the Feminist Forum, where so many of colleagues from different countries and regions got together to propose different papers that will be instrumental in the governments, countries, in our regions. And this is the road and the way to walk, as Costa Rica said, to network, to get together, to talk about all the issues that are cross-cutting for us as women, as diversities, and we need to include men in the co-responsibility and in all the issues that in the end cross-cutting gender and gender areas, women ministries, we always end up by taking ownership of so many issues that we need to start addressing with equality with men, to be able to join at the table, to solve together, and to talk about so many issues that are cross-cutting for us as a country, as a region. So thank you again to all the countries here today, and welcome you all to Argentina. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're calling it a day then, and at 4 p.m. right here we'll be opening the conference. Thank you very much.